the union wants to claim that schools are underfunded. They're actually spending about $30,000 a kid, and they're going to be spending close to $33,000 with the new contract per student. Only 54% of that money finds its way into the local schools. So you have this massive central office and these centralized programs, and so much money is diverted, and it's not getting to the local schools. Stacey Davis Gates claims, there's not enough librarians. We have class sizes. The Chicago public schools have one employee for every 7.5 kids. And that's before the current contract. One employee for every 7.5 kids. They have 22,000 non-teaching employees, non-teaching. And since COVID, they added 9,000 positions, even though schools were closed for 78 weeks. And the biggest increase in positions were like administrative, central office, central administration positions, not teachers. So at the end of the day, it's not a resources issue, it's a resource allocation issue. One needs to be done that's different. And we did a lot of this from 95 to 2001. I mean, despite going through an election where you had to fend off misinformation, I mean, we had a period of unprecedented positive working relationships with the teachers union, negotiated 2 contracts. Gary Chico and I raised teacher salaries in aggregate 26%, and we had a 40,000 increase in enrollment. We built 78 new school buildings, the majority of them in Black and Latino communities. I mean, we opened many of the magnet schools and put magnet programs in neighborhood schools. So we were having great success. School test scores were dramatically improving. The things that are game changers are the following. First, there's no substitution for high academic standards. We got rid of social promotion. They've restored it.
To your point, there's a practice in place right now in CPS. They're discussing about removing it, where no zero.
Completely.
The lowest grade you can get is a 50. So to your point, if you only have a mastery of 20% of the subject matter on the test, you're automatically going to get a 50, even if you have a 0% subject matter expertise. So
but if I can just be, if I can be objective and fair on this, the idea of having a student do disastrously on one test and that impacted their ultimate grade, I think there's a way to massage that or to do that without abandoning standards. The larger issue, though, is they're simply trying to do away with testing altogether. I mean, we have a mayor. Incidentally, our education mayor was an elementary school teacher for 4 years in a high school that I built, elementary school that I built, Jenner, before they tore down Cabrini Green. And then he lasted 1 year at Westinghouse, another high school, incidentally, that I paid for. Sure. So at the end of the day, we have this failed teacher who did not believe in testing. So, in fact, they're demonizing testing. Stacey Davis Gates has claimed that there's a racial bias. There's a white conspiracy to fail Black kids for testing. So they not only don't want tests to count, they don't want to rank schools based on academic performance. That's why they're trying to get rid of the magnet schools, because they offer a contrast. So
they don't want teacher evaluation.
They don't want teacher evaluation.
They don't want the grades of the students to be included in teacher evaluation. Exactly. How do you evaluate someone's performance other than the product that they deliver? In this case, the efficacy or the mastery, subject matter mastery of the student.
Well, granted, teachers a lot of times are going to be in schools where there are much greater challenges, but you can at least measure progress.
Yes.
I didn't look at cut scores. I looked at progress. I measured progress. And then when we did our teacher evaluations, and our evaluations were really designed to be teacher self-improvement plans. But the bottom line is this. When we raised accountability, when we increased instructional time on task so that the teachers had more time to work with the kids, test scores skyrocketed. Test scores not only improved dramatically, the number of students in the bottom quartile fell below the national level, which was phenomenal. We went from half the kids in the fourth and bottom quartile of academic improvement, academic performance to 23%, which was unprecedented. In other words, we were outperforming the entire nation overall when it came to the lowest performing students. We were making progress. But and in, of course, Philadelphia with the tripling of the math scores and doubling read scores, and New Orleans leading the state, high standards, accountability for everybody, and more instructional time on task, spending more time keeping the kids engaged, spending more time helping them get caught up. So there's no substitution for that. Secondly, there's no substitution for radically decentralizing the central office and pushing the money down to the local schools, and then giving the school principals and their locally elected school council the ability to kind of set priorities, to determine their own budgets. When you're only getting 54% of that $30,000, you're spending a lot of money and it's not finding its way into instruction. The third thing, which is absolutely critical, is local schools and the elected local school board councils with their principals need to have the ability. The community needs to be empowered to where if they have a failing school, they need to be able to have the capacity to select better school models. In Indianapolis, you have the innovation schools, public schools where the community says, our school's failing, we want a better model. In Camden, which has been transformed, you've got the innovation schools or the Renaissance schools. Same thing in Denver. In other words, you empower the community to decide what to do with their building, who to partner with, whether or not to have a longer school day, longer school year, whether or not to bring in a better school model. And then I think the fourth thing you have to do is give parents choice. If parents don't like the school that they're sending their kids to, the school in their neighborhood, they should have the right. They should have the right to enroll their kid in a charter school. There should be more magnet programs for kids. They should have the right to send their kids to parochial and private schools. I'm talking about low-income families. They need to have the right, because right now, the teachers union leadership, they either send their kids to private schools or they send their kids to select enrollment magnet schools,
Sure.
Incidentally, which they want to get rid of. So, I mean, once their kids are educated, they don't care if they'll get rid of it
Sure.
for anyone else.
Sure.
I mean, there were two studies that came out, and I don't know which one is more accurate, but between 30 to 40% of the Chicago teachers themselves send their kids to private schools. Send their kids to private schools. If our schools are so great, why are you sending your kids to private schools? And I'll submit to you that a large number of the other teachers who have children probably got their kids in magnet schools. Sure. I mean, like some of the union leaders, the mayor, they're not sending their kids, Stacey Davis Gates, they're not sending their kids to their neighborhood schools. They're getting their kids into magnet schools.
That's the